Hey everyone, and welcome to this 8th video tutorial on CSS. In this video I'm going to cover a bit more about selectors. One point I want to get across is that with CSS selectors you can actually select pretty much any element you want from your web page without having to just give it a class or an ID as we've previously seen. So you can select something by its attribute. So let me quickly show you an example. In this web page that I've just created in basic HTML, you see we've got several links here. So if I paste this selector here, what it says is find every A element, which is the anchor element or a link, with the href attribute equal to this URL. So it'll look through these A elements and it'll say, yep, that one is equal to that URL. So it'll apply these styles here to this content. It'll get to this element and that is not equal to that URL. Same with that, not equal, not equal. So if I save that and save that and come to here and refresh, you'll see this is now red because it's applied it to to that style. But say we wanted to select all the sub pages of this domain as well. So we actually want to highlight this one because it's part of the same website, and this one too. That is very easy. You can just put the whatever that symbol is called in there, and what that will do is it'll select everything which starts with that domain, and whatever is after it, that is fine. So if I come and refresh that page, you can see you've now got that one working fine. This one is also part of that selector, so that works fine. And this one is, however, this one is not because it's got a different domain. So that's all straightforward. And in the same way, we can use that selector to select any element, any attribute. So we could have done every time we've got an attribute. So we've got lots of attributes here. We've got input type equals text, name equals first name. So I could also have done, let's just change that to input. I could have done name equals first name, and then given that maybe a background of say red again. If I refresh the page here, you'll see that it's targeted this element because the name of that element is first name. So that's an example of how you can select something by its attribute. Now, as you can see, we've touched on this already, but just to reiterate it, we've got this input. I'll use this with a different example. We've got a P element here. We're going to apply a class, so let's say my text, like that. So if we wanted to target this class, we could type dot for class and then my text, like that, and then give it a whatever properties we like. Let's say blue. If we come to our Chrome window, refresh, we'll see that's now blue. In the same way, you can do p.myText, and that's still blue. And you could take away my text and just target the p elements. What was better save it? And you'll see that this text is also blue, even though it didn't have the my text class. And in the same way as that, you can target this to multiple elements. So this is now p and h1. We see it's now targeted to h1, and we can go back and add. So just target the p elements which have the class myText and all the h1 elements. If we refresh, we'll see this p element is no longer blue, that one is, and that one isn't. And in the same way, we could do just target the h1 elements which have the class myText and you refresh, and we see we've got no h1 elements with that class. So we've already been through that, and it's quite straightforward. And the same works with ID. So if you've got a text with an ID saying your ID must be unique. That's the only difference between ID and class. And in your CSS, it will start with a hashtag or hash instead of a dot. So if you've got something like that, you will see that. Whoops, I didn't save that. This is now blue because it's targeting that ID. And just to quickly summarize, you don't need the P symbol, but it's going to do the same thing. Now, if you wanted to target text inside something, so you can see here we've got a class called wrapper, and you want to target all the P elements inside that, you can just put a space between wrapper and P. So you'll see that will now be blue. If you don't put a space, so you're actually doing P dot or hope if I spelled stuff right. If you didn't put a space, so you just had that, it is going to target wrapper with the ID of something, which we don't actually have. So spaces do matter. Now, there's also a series of pseudo selectors, which I'm going to come onto in a later tutorial, but they basically let you select stuff based on more properties like hover. So when you hover over something, you can have a different class applied to it, or first, if it's the first element of that type, you can have a different class applied to it. But that is all I've got time for on this tutorial. So, yep, I'll see you in the next video.